I tell you, I didn't get that kind of reaction when I was born.
Judy Garland's public life sparkled with fame, glamour, and adoration. But her private world was built on shadows the studio system never wanted anyone to see. Beneath the jewels and flashing cameras was a relationship so intimate, so powerful, that it threatened the very image MGM worked tirelessly to maintain. This story involved forbidden love, relentless surveillance, and a trusted companion whose loyalty may never have been real. Over time, clues emerged about what really happened during Garland's peak years. Clues pointing to a carefully constructed lie that left deep emotional scars. Now, after decades of silence, the truth behind this relationship is finally coming to light, and the reality is far more unsettling than the legend. The childhood secrets Hollywood buried. Whether she wanted it or not, Judy Garland seemed destined for the spotlight. Born on June 10, 1922, to a pair of vaudeville performers, she entered a world where music, laughter, and bright lights were already stitched into the family fabric. But despite that theatrical beginning, she wasn't born a star. With the name Frances Ethel Gumm and a childhood that was far from glamorous, she had no idea how dark and painful the road to fame would truly become. Her life on stage began almost unbelievably early. At just 2 years old, Frances was performing in her father's movie theater, alongside her older sisters, Mary Jane and Virginia. Their mother played piano, and the three little girls became regulars, singing, dancing, and filling the small room with applause. But this early enchantment shattered when a devastating scandal erupted. In 1926, rumors began circulating about her father's inappropriate relations with young boys. The family fled to Lancaster hoping for a fresh start, but the damage followed them. The marriage between her parents crumbled, and while Frances watched that heartbreak unfold, her mother doubled down on one mission: turning her daughters into stars. Under her mother's rigid control, Frances's childhood became anything but innocent. In a shocking move that would haunt her for life, her mother introduced her to pills, stimulants in the morning to keep her energized, and sleeping pills at night to bring her back down. Frances later called her mother the real Wicked Witch of the West, fully aware that ambition, not care, guided those decisions. It was the beginning of a pattern of dependency that would shadow her entire career. As part of the Gumm Sisters Act, Frances suddenly found herself working non-stop. Her mother dragged the girls to any venue that would take them, including smoky nightclubs, far from ideal settings for children. And although Frances loved performing, she often sang out of fear. She remembered being threatened with physical punishment if she didn't go on stage, even when she felt sick. By the mid-1930s, the sisters realized their name was holding them back. After a humiliating billing error that branded them the Glum Sisters, they adopted a more elegant stage name, the Garland Sisters. Soon after, Frances took on a new first name as well, inspired by Hoagy Carmichael's hit song Judy. With that final step, Judy Garland was born. Her big break came quickly. While performing at the Orpheum Theater, Judy caught the eye of Burton Lane, a composer scouting talent for MGM. He was mesmerized. His glowing report led to an audition at the studio, where Judy delivered a performance so powerful and mature that MGM signed her on the spot. No screen test needed. But Judy's transition into Hollywood wasn't smooth. At 13, she was caught awkwardly between childhood and adulthood. Tiny at just under 5 feet tall, she didn't fit the glamorous mold of the era's leading ladies. Louis B. Mayer belittled her, calling her his little hunchback. And at MGM's school, she found herself surrounded by breathtaking beauties like Ava Gardner and Elizabeth Taylor. The studio even altered her appearance with dental caps and rubber nose pieces, and dressed her in childish outfits to maintain a specific image. Director Charles Walters later reflected that despite her success, Judy was treated like the studio's ugly duckling, a label that left deep and lasting scars. And even as her star began to rise, The insecurities planted in those early years followed her, shaping both her triumphs and her tragedies. Judy Garland's secret life at 16. Just as Judy Garland was stepping into an exciting but intimidating new chapter of her young show business life, she was suddenly struck by a devastating tragedy. Right before one of her earliest professional radio performances, she learned that her father had fallen gravely ill and had been rushed to the hospital with meningitis. He listened to her broadcast from his hospital bed, knowing he was losing his fight. By the next morning, he was gone. The loss shattered Judy, but almost unbelievably, she pushed forward, determined to make her mark. During her first year at MGM, Judy quickly came face-to-face with her biggest early rival, the poised blonde opera singer Deanna Durbin. The two girls couldn't have been more different, yet the buzz around the studio was hard to miss. Many believed MGM was quietly deciding which one of them to keep. Their talents would soon be tested side by side when the studio cast them together in the short musical Every Sunday. At the time, studios often used these short subjects as a clever way to gauge audience reaction without committing to a major production. For Judy, just 14 and restless for real work, this was her first significant chance to prove herself. Durbin, whose previous project had just been canceled, was in a similar place. Both were under contract, but with the industry convinced that only one would survive MGM's narrowing roster, Every Sunday became a disguised audition. When their voices were placed next to each other, the decision became clear. Judy's performance simply stood out, and from that moment forward, MGM threw its full support behind her. Soon after, Judy was invited to perform at Clark Gable's birthday celebration. She sang "You Made Me Love You" directly to the movie legend, who adored the tribute and rewarded her with a warm kiss. Louis B. Mayer, the all-powerful head of MGM, was equally delighted, welcoming her affectionately and signaling that her career was about to take off. By 1937, Judy had also developed a heartfelt crush on her co-star Mickey Rooney. In many ways, the two seemed perfectly matched. Both came from theatrical families, both had grown up under the bright demands of show business, and both had undergone name changes to fit Hollywood's expectations. Judy debuted on stage as a toddler alongside her sisters, while Mickey, already a veteran by his teens, had been performing since childhood under the guidance of his ambitious mother. Rooney, just a year older but far more experienced, had already amassed an impressive list of credits, beginning with his debut in 1926. He starred in a popular series of shorts as comic strip character Mickey Maguire, making him a familiar face long before Judy ever met him. The two first crossed paths in the mid-1930s, and although their early encounters were brief, the studio eventually recognized the magic that sparked when they worked together. Judy's first feature film appearance came in Pigskin Parade in 1936, and 1 year later, she and Rooney made their joint debut in Thoroughbreds Don't Cry. During filming, Rooney gave Judy an acting tip she carried with her for years. Deliver lines the way one sings, thoughtfully, rhythmically, and with heart. Their on-screen chemistry thrilled MGM executives, leading to a string of beloved backyard musicals. Audiences adored them, and together they became one of Hollywood's most iconic screen pairings. But beneath all the charm and sparkle, there was one painful truth. Mickey Rooney did not return Judy's feelings. On screen, she often played the girl next door, the sweet admirer pining after the boy who barely noticed her. Off-screen, her experience was heartbreakingly similar. Rooney, known for his many romantic pursuits, seemed interested in everyone except her. For Judy, the unreturned affection hurt deeply, but sadly, this disappointment was only the beginning of far greater struggles she would soon face. Behind MGM's polished facade, Judy Garland was living through something far darker than the glamorous Hollywood dream the world imagined. She later revealed that she, and many others, were routinely given amphetamines and barbiturates to survive the studio's relentless workload. Those pills, pushed as harmless fixes, set the stage for the lifelong addictions and health struggles that would follow her. But the pills were only the beginning. Already feeling isolated, Judy found herself targeted by constant criticism. Executives decided she looked too heavy and placed her on an extreme, punishing diet. In one infamous incident, when she ordered a normal meal, they brought her nothing but lettuce and soup. Moments like that chipped away at her self-esteem until she could no longer see her own beauty. As she was grappling with this pressure, an even more disturbing side of Hollywood emerged. In her unfinished biography, Judy wrote about being invited into men's bedrooms again and again after turning 16. The worst behavior, she said, came from Louis B. Mayer himself. He had a habit of touching her inappropriately under the guise of showing her where her heart was. His advances became routine, a part of the workday she learned to endure. Eventually, exhausted and fed up, she stood up to him and told him never to touch her again. Mayer was stunned, but he was far from the only executive who abused their power over her. Then came 1938, the year Judy secured the role that would define her career, Dorothy Gale in The Wizard of Oz. But even this triumph came with a painful truth. She was not MGM's first choice. Mayer tried first for Shirley Temple, then offered the part to Deanna Durbin. Judy only received the role after those options fell through. At 16, she captivated audiences with her emotional depth and stunning voice. On screen, Dorothy's journey through Oz was magical and hopeful. But behind the scenes, Judy's real-life experience was anything but enchanting. On set, she endured harassment from several of the actors playing the Munchkins, who behaved inappropriately and made her feel unsafe. According to later accounts, some even tried to grope her under her dress. Adding to her suffering, Judy had recently survived a serious car accident that left her with broken ribs, a punctured lung, and spinal injuries. Studio doctors showed little concern for her recovery. Just 8 days after the accident, they sent her back to work, propped up by even more drugs to mask the pain. By the time Oz began filming that fall, she was already hooked on the pills she'd been prescribed. MGM's obsession with her appearance only intensified. Because Dorothy was supposed to be 8 years old, the studio taped down Judy's chest and forced her into a tight corset to make her look younger. Her pigtails were styled to conceal her figure. Producers placed her on a near-starvation diet, and when she resisted, they insulted her cruelly, calling her a fat little pig with pigtails. To suppress her appetite even further, they gave her dexedrine, a highly addictive stimulant known for harsh side effects, like insomnia. On top of that, she was encouraged to smoke up to 80 cigarettes a day and live off black coffee and chicken soup. The drugs didn't stop there. To keep up with 15-hour workdays, MGM loaded her with a cocktail of benzedrine, phenobarbital, Seconal, and other amphetamines. She needed sleeping pills to rest, then stimulants to wake up, often staying on her feet for days at a time. Any concern for her well-being came second to the studio's hunger for a perfect performance. Even her co-stars and directors were far from compassionate. Reports described the main cast avoiding her entirely, and director Victor Fleming once struck her across the face when she couldn't stop laughing during a scene. She was constantly criticized for her teeth and nose, forcing her to wear caps and rubber inserts to correct her look for the camera. By 18, Judy was already spiraling into severe addiction. MGM's head of publicity arranged for her to see psychiatrists nearly every morning for the next 20 years. She struggled with psychotic episodes, crippling insomnia, frightening hallucinations, and suicidal thoughts, all while being expected to smile for the camera. Yet despite everything happening behind the scenes, Judy's talent blazed through. Her work in The Wizard of Oz was unforgettable, and in 1939, she received her first and only Academy Award for her performances in that film, and Babes in Arms. But as the 1940s approached, Hollywood began steering her toward more adult roles. It sounded like a natural next step, but it brought new challenges that Judy had never faced. Because up until then, She had never been portrayed as a romantic lead, not in her films and not in her own private life. That too was about to change. The tragic side of Judy's glamour. When production moved into Little Nellie Kelly, Judy Garland suddenly found herself navigating one of the most demanding roles of her career so far. She had to learn a brand new accent, film her very first on-screen kiss, and deliver a deeply emotional death scene. And even though she handled pressure like a pro, that kiss was uncomfortable for everyone involved. Her co-star, George Murphy, didn't help matters at all. He actually mocked her efforts, saying the moment felt humiliating, comparing it to kissing a hillbilly with a child bride. It was a cutting remark, and, unfortunately, only a small preview of the heartbreak waiting just around the corner. Still in her teens, Judy fell head over heels for the charismatic bandleader, Artie Shaw. To her, he wasn't just a crush. He was her first real adult love. The problem was, Shaw came with baggage, 2 ex-wives, and a reputation for volatile relationships. And just as quickly as the romance began, it ended. In early 1940, Shaw vanished from her life and then eloped with Hollywood's blonde bombshell, Lana Turner. Judy was devastated, and it quietly marked the beginning of a painful pattern. Soon after, she became involved with musician David Rose. Despite the fact that Rose was married, he eagerly proposed the moment she turned 18. The studio, horrified at the idea of their young star being swept up by an older married man, blocked the wedding until Rose finalized his divorce. Judy agreed to wait, but she wasn't waiting alone. During that pause, she plunged into a passionate affair with songwriter Johnny Mercer. He was married and 30 years old, making the relationship a full-blown Hollywood scandal. Mercer fell for her deeply, even writing the now classic song I Remember You about her, with lyrics that made their connection unmistakable. Their age gap and Mercer's marriage sparked plenty of gossip, and friends urged them to end things. Even after they tried to part ways, the two kept drifting back to each other, much to the fury of Mercer's wife, who eventually forbade the song from being played in their home. By the time David Rose returned with divorce papers in hand, Judy was ready to move forward. They married, but the romance quickly soured. In 1941, Judy became pregnant, and the studio panicked. Her entire image was built around innocence and youth. Motherhood threatened everything. Under intense pressure from MGM and from her own mother, Judy was pushed into having an abortion. Heartbreakingly, the same situation repeated in 1943 during her affair with actor Tyrone Power. The emotional toll was enormous. Her marriage to Rose grew cold and strained. Their shared love of music wasn't enough to bridge the widening gap between Judy's spirited youthfulness and Rose's preference for quiet domesticity. His role in urging her toward an abortion drove them even further apart. By 1944, their marriage ended in divorce. Yet, in the midst of this turmoil, a ray of hope arrived. Judy was cast as the romantic lead in Meet Me in St. Louis, a huge leap forward in her career. Thanks to makeup artist Dorothy Ponedel, she experienced a transformation that went far beyond cosmetics. Ponedel removed the artificial touches Judy had long been taught she needed: caps, discs, and modifications, and reshaped her brows, hairline, and lips just enough to highlight her natural beauty. For the first time, Judy saw herself as a real leading lady. The boost in confidence was life-changing, and she insisted that Ponedel be included in all future contracts. That confidence lit up the screen. Her performance of Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, delivered in that elegant red dress and shimmering pearls, became iconic. A moment of pure, magnetic Judy Garland, and behind the scenes, sparks were flying. She was involved with both Orson Welles, who was still married to Rita Hayworth, and director Vincente Minnelli. While her brief affair with Welles ended amicably, her connection with Minnelli grew deeper. He had been instrumental in reshaping her on-screen image, and by 1945, their romance was undeniable. They married that June. 1 year later, Judy received the news she had long been denied. She was pregnant, And this time, the studio allowed her to keep the baby. In 1946, she gave birth to Liza Minnelli, who would one day become a star in her own right. For a moment, Judy's life seemed to be settling into a hopeful new chapter. But behind the public smiles, her mental health was deteriorating. While filming The Pirate in 1948, years of pressure, exhaustion, and reliance on medication finally caught up with her. Judy suffered a severe breakdown and was sent to a private sanatorium. Although she returned to finish the film, her absence caused massive delays, and the movie ultimately flopped, a major blow to her confidence. Soon after, in July of that same year, Judy reached a breaking point and attempted to take her own life using broken glass. The injuries were minor, but the incident led to further treatment and a brief stay in a psychiatric hospital. And tragically, this was only the beginning of the long, difficult battles Judy Garland would face. After the collapse of her dream role in Royal Wedding, Judy Garland could no longer outrun the darkness that had followed her for so long. She slipped into a deep depression, and in one heartbreaking moment, she attempted to harm herself with a shard of glass. The physical injury was minor, but the headlines were anything but. The press latched onto the story, twisting it into something sensational and grotesque. Yet beneath all the noise, Judy's message was painfully clear. She needed someone in her corner, someone willing to step in when her world became too heavy to carry alone. Looking back on that moment, Judy admitted that all she could see ahead was confusion. She wanted to blot out her past, her future, her pain, and even strike back at those who had wounded her. But if she hoped her longtime studio would support her, she would be sorely disappointed. After 15 years with MGM, years filled with triumphs and breakdowns, the studio had simply grown tired of her struggles. By September 1950, the partnership was officially over. Hollywood had washed its hands of Judy Garland. Her personal life soon followed the same downward spiral. Her marriage to Vincente Minnelli, already strained by years of emotional turbulence, finally fell apart. Some whispered that Minnelli's rumored sexuality played a role in the unraveling. Whatever the truth, pressures were mounting from every side, and the marriage simply couldn't withstand it. Suddenly, Judy found herself adrift, out of work, running out of money, and desperate for a way back into the spotlight. Fortunately, she had a loyal friend who refused to give up on her, Bing Crosby. Seeing how far she had fallen, he invited her onto his hugely popular radio show, hoping to help her get back on her feet. On the night of her appearance, Judy was consumed by fear. She trembled backstage, convinced the audience would judge her scars, both visible and invisible. But Crosby stepped in with exactly the support she needed, giving her a warm, protective introduction that steadied her trembling resolve. Taking a deep breath, she walked toward the light. That single step marked the beginning of a remarkable rebirth. Judy's return to performing felt natural, almost like slipping back into her true self. Her first appearance on Crosby's show was such a triumph that she became a recurring guest, appearing 8 times over the next year. From there, she moved back to the stage, reconnecting with her vaudeville roots, and suddenly, everything clicked. In 1951, despite the turmoil in her personal life, she embarked on a 4-month concert tour that critics hailed as spectacular. When she performed at the London Palladium, she felt completely reborn, and the ovation she received was unlike anything the theater's manager had ever heard. Her momentum only grew. Her residency at the Palace Theater in Manhattan shattered records and became known as one of the greatest personal triumphs in show business history. And as her career soared once again, her personal life found a streak of unexpected warmth. While still tied to Minnelli, she had fallen into a passionate new relationship with businessman Sidney Luft. He felt compelled to protect her, describing their connection as an overwhelming force, and soon became both her partner and her manager. In 1952, they married and welcomed a daughter, Lorna. Believing wholeheartedly in Judy's talent, Luft pushed for a major Hollywood comeback, and together, they produced A Star Is Born. But the road back was rocky. Judy slipped into old habits that caused delays and ballooned production costs, infuriating studio executives. Even though the film was beloved by audiences and performed well at the box office, it failed to make a profit due to its enormous budget. Still, Judy's performance shone brightly enough to earn an Academy Award nomination, and many thought the Oscar was hers for the taking. But fate had other plans. Because she had just given birth, Judy watched the ceremony from her hospital room while a camera crew waited to capture her victory. When Grace Kelly's name was announced instead, the room fell silent. Crew members quietly packed up their equipment as the rest of the world watched Kelly accept the award. To many, Judy's loss felt like a robbery. Groucho Marx even said so in a telegram. By 1959, another crisis loomed. Judy was hospitalized with acute hepatitis, her liver severely damaged. Doctors told her she might have only 5 years to live and would likely never perform again. But instead of despair, she felt an unexpected sense of release. For the first time, the relentless pressure seemed to lift, and true to form, she refused to surrender. At the same time, financial trouble was closing in fast. Years of unpaid taxes had caught up to her, and she was now buried under enormous debt. Despite her failing health and the IRS breathing down her neck, she kept working, pushing forward with the same determination that had carried her through countless storms. Amid the chaos, she found a brief refuge in a new romance. While filming The Judy Garland Show, she fell for actor Glenn Ford. Their 6-month relationship was one of her healthiest, with Ford attending her tapings and quietly supporting her from the front row. But when Judy hoped for a deeper commitment, Ford pulled away, unable to settle down. Left heartbroken yet again, Judy returned to a marriage that was already fractured beyond repair. And once more, she found herself standing on the edge, facing the wreckage of both her personal life and her relentless, extraordinary career. Judy Garland's shattered fairy tale. Now things were growing increasingly rocky between Judy Garland and Sid Luft. Their marriage had been on shaky ground for years, marked by repeated divorce filings and emotional reconciliations. But by 1963, Judy had finally reached her breaking point. This time, there was no going back. She filed for divorce again. Only now, she came armed with a long list of allegations. Judy claimed Sid had struck her during one of his drunken episodes and had even tried to take her children from her. But the accusation she emphasized most was mental cruelty. Their once promising relationship had crumbled beyond repair. And as she severed ties with him personally, she also cut him loose professionally. The chaos in her private life was beginning to seep into her work, and audiences could feel the shift. After her TV show wrapped, Judy returned to what had always been her home base, the stage. But even that familiar ground became unsteady. In 1964, after 2 strong performances, she made a mistake that would haunt her. For her 3rd show in Melbourne, Australia, she arrived an hour late, and worse, she appeared visibly intoxicated. The crowd had zero patience. As the curtain rose, the audience turned on her in full force. For 45 agonizing minutes, they hurled insults, booed, and shouted her down. Judy, once so adored, was forced to stand in the harsh glow of that hostility until she couldn't take another second and finally fled the stage. She later described the crowd as brutish, but no matter how she framed it, the reviews that followed cut deeply. Still reeling from the fallout of her divorce from Luft and desperate for stability, Judy made another unfortunate decision. She signed with agents Freddie Fields and David Begelman. She believed they would guide her career, but instead, they exploited it. Behind the scenes, they were quietly draining her finances. By the time she broke free, the damage was catastrophic. By 1966, she owed an overwhelming $500,000 to the IRS. Federal agents were closing in, and Judy was forced to sell her home for far less than it was worth. Even then, her money troubles only intensified. In 1967, after a successful run at New York's Palace Theater, authorities swooped in and seized most of her earnings right off the top. Amid all this, Judy kept searching for love. Although still technically married to Luft, she began a relationship with her tour promoter, Mark Heron. They attempted to marry, only to pump the brakes once they realized her divorce wasn't finished. When all the paperwork was finally cleared, they wed in Las Vegas in 1965. But just months later, the marriage disintegrated. Judy accused Heron of beating her. Heron insisted it was self-defense. Another chapter ended in heartbreak. And yet, Judy never stopped hoping for something better. In 1966, fate introduced her to Mickey Deans in a way that almost seemed scripted. He arrived at her New York hotel to deliver a package of amphetamines sent by a mutual friend. But when he saw her children nearby, he smoothly pretended to be a doctor. It was an odd start to a romance, but for the next few years, Judy and Mickey drifted in and out of each other's lives. Finally, in 1969, he proposed. She said yes, but neither of them realized how little time remained. As Judy's health declined, Mickey pushed hard to revive her career, but her addictions were an obstacle neither love nor ambition could overcome. Then came the devastating moment. On June 22, 1969, Mickey found her in the bathroom of their London rental home. Judy Garland, legend, icon, and eternal symbol of both brilliance and fragility, was gone at just 47 years old. The official cause was an accidental overdose, though some experts suggested she may have suffered from cirrhosis. Whatever the medical explanation, her lifelong battles and the relentless pressure that shaped her had finally caught up to her. The world of entertainment mourned deeply. For millions who grew up loving her, Judy Garland's death felt like losing a guiding light, one that had flickered, struggled, and ultimately burned out far too soon. The Judy Garland mystery. Finally solved, and it's not good. Judy Garland is often remembered as the dazzling icon of Hollywood's golden age, a star wrapped in glamour, gifted with an unforgettable voice, and adored by audiences around the world. But behind that brilliant facade, her personal life was far more complicated than it seemed. While the public saw the furs, the jewels, and the handsome leading men, quieter stories began to surface over the decades, revealing a much more layered reality. During her peak years, Garland was frequently photographed on the arms of powerful studio executives and famous actors. She married 5 times, and everything about her public image fit the mold of a traditional Hollywood leading lady. But as time passed, a different narrative emerged, one that suggested she didn't restrict her romantic life to men alone. Among these stories was a particularly significant connection to a woman named Betty Asher. Betty came from serious Hollywood pedigree. She was the sister of producer-director William Asher, known for shows like Bewitched and I Love Lucy, and the daughter of noted Universal Studios producer Ephraim Asher. MGM publicity chief Howard Strickling assigned her to get close to Garland, initially as a way to distract Judy from her whirlwind romance with bandleader Artie Shaw. But Betty's role quickly deepened. She became both Garland's lover and, under MGM's orders, a covert informant. On instructions from the studio's feared fixer, Eddie Mannix, Betty even introduced Garland to alcohol, hoping she'd loosen up and reveal more secrets. Much of what she learned ended up reported straight back to Mannix. Sometimes while she was sharing his bed, Betty had already played similar roles before, including smoothing the way for Lana Turner, who surprised everyone by marrying Artie Shaw in 1940. Judy was crushed by the sudden marriage, and in a bout of jealousy, quickly slept with Shaw's best friend. Meanwhile, Turner soon found herself pregnant, and with the help of Mannix and a fabricated publicity tour to Hawaii, she quietly underwent an abortion. When she returned, she threw herself into a string of brief affairs with several rising male stars. Judy's own life spun into similar chaos. In 1941, she eloped to Las Vegas with bandleader David Rose. Their marriage collapsed within months, yet during that short period, she became pregnant. MGM stepped in immediately, arranging a secret abortion without even informing Rose. Afterward, Garland returned to her relationship with Betty Asher, still unaware that her closest confidant had been spying on her all along. Soon, Judy and Betty became an inseparable presence in Los Angeles, shopping, holding hands, going to shows, fully embodying one of the city's most talked-about pairings. And when it came to Garland's relationships, it became increasingly clear that she was not strictly heterosexual. She was openly comfortable with partners of either gender and had a long history of relationships with bisexual or gay men, including her future husband, Vincente Minnelli. Those closest to her later recalled that she often felt women were simply more attentive lovers, which made her gravitate toward them emotionally and physically. Betty remained by her side for years, even serving as maid of honor when Garland married Minnelli. But that loyalty collapsed when Minnelli revealed something Betty had done to Judy long ago. The realization hit hard. Betty had never been the trusted friend Garland thought she was. Instead, she had been a tool, used and manipulated by Strickling and Mannix to control Judy's personal life. Feeling utterly betrayed, Garland fired her immediately. The fallout was devastating. Betty Asher was left shattered, unable to understand or accept Judy's sudden rejection after years of closeness. According to her brother Bill, she never recovered from the heartbreak. A few years later, overwhelmed by the loss, she took her own life.